Good afternoon. I would like to call this meeting to order. Today's date is October 21st, 2021. Before we start addressing the items on our regular agenda, I would like to go over today's schedule. First, we will go through the board's agenda as we normally do. Then we will break for 5 minutes and start the public meeting portion of the record. I would like to point out that if you are planning on providing comments during the public meeting, there is a sign-up sheet towards the entrance, and I kindly ask that you please sign up. Thank you. Right now, I will ask our legal director, Angela Hawkins, to call the roll, please.
Chair French.
Here.
Department of Agriculture. Here. Department of Health.
Here.
Department of Natural Resources.
Here.
Department of Development.
Here.
EPA.
Here.
Our public member, Greg Murphy. Senator Hottinger.
Here.
Senator Williams.
Present.
Representative Stein.
Here.
And Representative Crossman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next order of business is approving the minutes from the meeting of September 16, 2021. I will take a motion to approve the minutes as prepared, please. Is there a second? Are there any comments or discussions on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes as prepared are approved. We will now move into the cases on our agenda, beginning with item number 1, which is case 20-1362 ELBGN, please.
In this order, the Ohio Power Siting Board issues a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need to Clearview Solar One, LLC, for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a solar-powered electric generation facility in Champaign County, Ohio, subject to the conditions set forth in the stipulation and consistent with this opinion, order, and certificate.
Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Item number 1 is approved. Item number 2 is case 20-1380 ELBGN, please.
In this order, the Ohio Power Siting Board approves the stipulation and recommendation filed by the parties and issues a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need to Ross County Solar, LLC, for the construction, operation, and maintenance of a solar-powered electric generation facility in Ross County, Ohio, subject to the conditions set forth in this opinion, order, and certificate.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Item number 2 is approved. Item number 3, case 21-269 ELBTA, please.
In this order on certificate, the Ohio Power Siting Board grants an application filed by AEP Ohio Transmission Company for an amendment to its certificate for the Vigo Pine Ridge Switch Rebuild Project, which authorizes the company to make 44 adjustments in the locations of certain approved structures due to terrain and construction restrictions, to reduce line angles created when other structures were shifted, to maximize distances between the transmission line and sensitive environmental resources, and to minimize adverse effects on productive and recreational lands.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Item number 3 is approved. Item number 4, case 21-508 ELBGA, please.
In this order on certificate, the Ohio Power Siting Board grants an application filed by Madison Field Solar Project, LLC, to amend its certificate to add 925 acres to the 1,006-acre electric generating facility footprint, all of which is located within the approved certificated project area in Madison County, Ohio.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Item number 4 is approved. Next, item number 5, the last item on our agenda, case 21-793 ELBGA, please.
In this order, the Ohio Power Siting Board approves the application filed by Harrison Power, LLC, seeking to amend its certificate to add 35 megawatts of output to the natural gas combined cycle electric generation facility certificate the company is authorized to construct in Harrison County, Ohio.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Item number 5 is approved. Now that we have finished the voting portion of our meeting, we will move on to the scheduled public meeting for comments on the draft transmission report. But before we do that, let's take a brief 5-minute intermission. Please feel free to leave the room if you do not wish to stay for the public meeting. And if you are staying for the public meeting and plan to offer comments, please use the sign-up sheet near the entrance. Thank you. We'll take a break now. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Oh, do I need to sign? We're getting off track. There you are.
Senator, thank you.
And I'll be in touch.
Hey, Angela, mics are hot, mics are hot. Hey guys, everyone's mics are on right now on the stream, just FYI.
Okay, let's go on the record, please. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer French, and I am the chair of the Ohio Power Siting Board. Also with me is Sarah Huffman with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Brittany Colvin with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Drew Bergman with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, Jack Christopher with the Department of Development, and Jean Phillips with the Department of Health. We also have our legislative members, Senator Hottinger, who had to step out but will be back in just a moment, Representative Stein. Thank you for being here. We also have Judge Wallstra, one of the board's administrative law judges who was assigned to this case. The subject of today's public meeting is the draft transmission report, which was prepared by staff of the Ohio Power Siting Board and filed in case number 21796ELUNC and is captioned in the matter of the Ohio Power Siting Board's report to the General Assembly regarding the power transmission system. I will be moderating today's public meeting. We have a court reporter with us to take record of the comments as well. I kindly ask that you speak clearly and at a reasonable speed, which is exactly what I'm trying to do right now as well, so that the court reporter can accurately transcribe the hearing. Before we get started, I would like to provide a brief overview of why we are here and what we hope to accomplish. Today's public meeting is being held consistent with Revised Code Section 2906.105. Pursuant to this section, the Ohio Power Siting Board is required to submit a report to the General Assembly as to whether the current requirements for the planning of the power transmission system and associated facilities investment in Ohio are cost-effective and in the interest of consumers. The board must complete the report in consultation with Jobs Ohio and hold at least one public meeting. The report is due to the General Assembly no later than December 1st, 2021. The purpose of today's public meeting is to hear feedback from interested stakeholders regarding the draft transmission report. Today's public meeting is not a question and answer session. It is strictly an opportunity for stakeholders to offer comments in relation to the draft transmission report. If interested stakeholders previously filed written comments in this case docket regarding the draft transmission report, I kindly ask that you limit your comments to those that are supplemental in nature. That is, there's no need to repeat previously filed comments as they are already entered into the record, but you may supplement them. This process will help ensure everyone has sufficient time to speak. Both the written comments and stakeholder feedback given today will be considered by the board likely at the next meeting in November as the transmission report is finalized for submission to the General Assembly. Before we get started, are there any procedural questions? Okay. At this time, Mr. Schilling has already brought the witness list for me. So at this time, I would, Mr. Bryce McKenney, could you please come forward and provide your comments?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I just consider it a distinct privilege to go first here this afternoon. My name is Bryce McKenney. I'm an attorney with McNeese, Wallace, and Nurick, and I'm here on behalf of Industrial Energy Users Ohio, or IEU Ohio. IEU Ohio is an association of industrial customers, businesses, manufacturers, each of which are located in the state of Ohio, and which together employ tens of thousands of Ohioans and have employed tens of thousands of Ohioans. IEU Ohio's members purchase substantial amounts of electricity and are thus directly impacted by the board's actions, and as well as the somewhat recent and substantial increases in transmission rates, which have been noted in the comments filed in this proceeding. I'll try to be brief with my comments this afternoon, as IEU Ohio itself has already filed comments in this case, first on August 4th, then again on October 8th. To that end, I would encourage the board and the board staff to review those comments more closely, with a particular focus on the actual line between federal and state jurisdiction, the impacts of transmission rates on Ohio businesses, and how the board can do more to fulfill this state's policy to maintain Ohio's competitiveness in the global economy. To these ends, we would strongly encourage the board to take on a more active role in reviewing, investigating, and reporting on certain transmission investments known specifically as supplemental projects. As has been noted throughout the comments filed in the docket, I'm sure we may hear more about them in the stakeholders presenting today. One of the driving forces for the increase in transmission rates on Ohio businesses has been the increase in the number of supplemental transmission projects constructed in the state of Ohio. Supplemental transmission projects are projects that are not needed for reliability. So, for example, they may be projects necessary for an end-of-life replacement or for another reason. However, due to the lack of transparency at both the state and federal levels, it can be difficult and sometimes impossible to ascertain whether the overall increase in the number of supplemental transmission projects being constructed and the commensurate increase in transmission rates is in the public interest. While the board's draft report rightly indicates that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has jurisdiction over transmission rates and that those rates increase as transmission projects reviewed by this board are placed into service. We are not asking this board to step into the shoes of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Likewise, we are not asking this board to regulate transmission rates or transmission cost allocation matters. However, the Ohio General Assembly has apparently recognized the impacts of increasing transmission rates on Ohio businesses, and it has asked this board to prepare a report on whether the current requirements for the planning of the power transmission system and associated facilities investment are cost-effective and in the interest of consumers. To that end, the General Assembly has also asked this board to work with Jobs Ohio, stakeholders, the PJM Independent Market Monitor. Stakeholders, businesses, manufacturers have all been consistent in their comments. We would appreciate additional actions by this board to provide transparency and clarity on future transmission investment, particularly as it relates to supplemental transmission projects. For example, clarification from the General Assembly that this board has authority to request information from transmission utilities on expected future investment in supplemental facilities and projected rate impacts over a planning window of 5 years would be much appreciated. I would note that Section 406.03C of the Ohio Revised Code does already provide this board with authority to adopt rules establishing criteria for evaluating the projected needs for electric power. And other sections of the Revised Code already provide this board with authority to require transmission utilities to provide more data, analysis, reporting for businesses to better prepare for the future and future transmission rate increases. IU Ohio's recommendation for this board to request additional reporting and clarification from the General Assembly would clarify how much of the increased spending on supplemental transmission projects is for projects that support actual economic development, end-of-life replacement, or are being conducted for other reasons. PJM, the regional transmission operator, does have a transmission cost information center. And a look at all supplemental transmission projects under development just in this state indicates about 600 projects at a total cost of $5 billion. This is a substantial amount of investment, and we are asking for this board to take a more proactive role in reviewing these projects. In a review of these projects, on the PJM website is a spreadsheet, and a substantial number of them can be seen for things like customer service, without a definition of what exactly being constructed for customer service purposes means. This is where additional input from the board as a state jurisdictional regulator over the siting of these projects would help Ohio businesses. IU Ohio does not dispute that supplemental projects are necessary, can be good for economic development, but the rapid and substantial increase in transmission costs resulting from supplemental projects requires additional reporting and analysis so that we can project future power costs. IU Ohio is not in a position to say that spending on supplemental transmission projects is too high, but neither are we in a position to say they are not. We simply do not have the information necessary to evaluate whether spending on supplemental transmission projects is in the public interest. Beyond this, IU Ohio is not the regulator, and as the regulator oversighting and to some extent planning of the transmission system, we call on this board to exercise its authority to provide businesses, manufacturers, consumers, and other stakeholders more information so that they can better forecast future electricity costs. Regarding the other proposals by the board in the draft report, IU Ohio supports competition in the development and implementation of transmission projects. While FERC has a history of attempting to promote competition in transmission service, only approximately 3% of total transmission investment between 2013 and 2017 was actually subject to competition. Further, competition for transmission planning means much more than competitive solicitation for labor and materials, as one transmission utility noted in its comments in this docket. Rather, transmission utilities should be required to take competitive offers for transmission solutions to identified transmission needs. The PJM Independent Market Monitor stated in its 2020 State of the Market Report, if there is a need for a supplemental project, that need should be clearly defined, and there should be a transparent, robust, and clearly defined mechanism to permit competition to build the project. If there is no defined need for a supplemental project for reliability, economic efficiency, or operational performance, then that project should not be included in rates. IU Ohio supports competition, and we appreciate the board's report and its initiatives to support competition and competitive processes to maintain reliability and a robust transmission grid at the least overall cost to consumers. Regarding other proposals by the board within its draft report, IU Ohio is supportive of measures to streamline the siting process, lower overall cost to consumers, and provide additional transparency. Any measure that accomplishes these goals will be a step forward for business and jobs in the state of Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of my fellow board members have any questions for Mr. McKenney with respect to his comments? No? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Devin Flayhive. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Good afternoon. I couldn't tell if Mr. McKenney had removed his mask, and I would ask,
You are free to do so.
okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And thank you for holding this public meeting regarding the draft power transmission report. My name is Devin Flayhive. I'm with the law firm Porter, Wright, Morrison, Arthur, 41 South High Street, Suite 2900, Columbus, Ohio, 43215. I'm outside counsel for First Energy and American Transmission Systems Incorporated, which I may refer to as ATSI. To set the stage, my remarks on behalf of ATSI are designed to specifically address a couple of points made in the reply comments. They're not intended to offer input that's duplicative of input from other transmission owners, nor are they intended to rehash ATSI's own written comments as previously filed. I will cover two discrete topics this afternoon. The first relates to arguments that have been advanced in favor of adding a competitive bidding criterion to the factors that the board considers in approving transmission line projects. And the second entails a brief clarification relative to why it would not be appropriate for the Power Siting Board to assert authority for overseeing supplemental projects. Competitive bidding. ATSI first emphasizes that the board was right to conclude in the draft report that projects should not be required to have been competitively bid in order to be eligible for certification. Even so, ATSI asks for reconsideration of the draft report's proposed recommendation that there should be a factor relative to competitive bidding as part of the certification process and what the board looks at as that unfolds. From a survey of the reply comments that have been filed, this term competitive bidding has been used loosely. Certain comments suggest that competitive bidding means a competitive procurement process for labor and materials, and other comments seem to interpret competitive bidding to mean competitive development. ATSI thus addresses both this afternoon. The PJM planning process already includes a competitive bidding requirement for regional projects, and consistent with good utility practice, ATSI sources labor and materials via a competitive process to ensure a steady supply chain and also the lowest possible rates. This kind of competitive bidding criterion would thus be redundant and unnecessary because utilities are already subject to prudency review of project costs at the federal level. Specifically, under ATSI's transmission formula rate protocols, interested parties may bring a formal challenge to those rates on prudence grounds in addition to filing a complaint with FERC. Interested parties is a broad term, and it's defined to include, for example, state utility regulators and consumer advocates. So in every federal transmission rate case, interveners can challenge cost recovery for any expense that was not deemed a prudent investment or expense. As a result, ATSI provides significant documentation through the discovery process before FERC in the federal forum regarding costs for its projects. Increased time and expense associated with regulated competitive solicitations is well documented, especially now when Ohio needs reliable transmission infrastructure, perhaps more than ever. Adding delays to the siting process would be contrary to economic development and potentially harm electric reliability for customers. Further, state-level competitive solicitations or development initiatives, so switching gears to kind of this second bucket of competitive bidding, would be contrary to federal transmission planning as well as inconsistent with standards set by FERC for cost allocation. Strikingly, none of the comments that have been filed to lend support for state-level competitive development for transmission projects cite to any authority for the legal feasibility of this notion. Regulation of transmission infrastructure development, in contrast to siting, is within FERC's exclusive jurisdictional purview. And because the board is not a transmission planning entity like PJM, the board is ill-equipped to evaluate the relative merits of competing project proposals. For many of these projects, there's not an apples-to-apples comparison. The board should also consider resulting implementation issues and other agreements between what would be incumbent and non-incumbent transmission developers that the board would have to referee. For these reasons, the board should not mandate nor consider any element of competitive bidding as a factor for certification of a transmission line or facilities project. Segueing to the oversight of supplemental projects. Relative to supplemental projects, ATSI and other Ohio transmission-owning utilities are not flying under the regulatory radar. Supplemental projects fall within the purview of federal transmission planning under the Federal Power Act, and PJM's M3 process, which is part of the FERC-filed PJM Open Access Transmission Tariff, not only meets FERC's requirements, it's unique among regional transmission organizations. Not every RTO has adopted the same M3 process as PJM, and arguably PJM's M3 process is the most transparent of its kind. In closing, ATSI thanks the board for its diligence in connection with preparing the draft report and urges the board to closely examine economic consequences, transmission development concerns, and costs to Ohio ratepayers before recommending any expansion for the scope of siting review. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Flahay? No? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that is the end of the individuals that signed up to provide comments today. Is there anyone else that wishes to provide comments at this time? Okay, thank you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for coming today and participating in this public meeting. I would also like to remind you that a final transmission report will be forthcoming, and the comments offered today will be entered into the record by our court reporter. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Also, before we leave, our next public meeting will take place on Thursday, November 18th at 3:30 in this room. We are adjourned. Have a great day, everyone.